Welcome to Nightlight. Step away from the mainstream and gather around as we enlighten the world and our realities and travel this cosmic journey we call life. Join us as we share with you and provide that beacon that can guide us all to a better way. Explore with us as we examine a metaphysical montage of spiritual insights covering everything from the mundane to the magical, UFOs to unicorns, and everything in between. This is a time of awakening, of sharing and evolving, of spreading our wings and soaring on the cosmic breath of creation. Come and join with other like-minded spirits as we weave our lights together to seek understanding, enlightenment, and with a little luck, some wisdom. This is Nightlight, a reminder that you are never alone.
Welcome to Nightlight, everybody. I'm so glad you could join me today because I have a special book and a favorite author with me. And I have to tell you, I get excited about all the books I read, but this one is special. And it's one I highly recommend you pick up because you're going to be so engrossed by it that you're going to flip out. It's that good. It's called The Original Zodiac, and it's by Phillips. And let me tell you a little about it. It's discovered the world's earliest known system of astrology. Phillips explores ancient Mesopotamian astrology, which originated with the creators of Göbekli Tepe. He details the system's 18 zodiac signs and shares his decades-long research to decipher the meanings behind each of them. He reveals how the original zodiac can enrich our understanding of astrology, personal relationships, and our sense of self and destiny. And it's all that and more. You will not believe the kind of material he gives you in this book. Graham is one of Britain's best-selling nonfiction authors, a former radio journalist and broadcaster for the BBC, and founder of Strange Phenomena magazine. He's a historical investigator of unsolved mysteries and the author of many books. And I'm not going to list them all because there are a lot of them. But if you check out his website and his YouTube channel and mine, you'll find that I've read a lot of his books, and they're all wonderful. But this one especially was intriguing. Let me bring him on before I just go on and on. Welcome to the show, Graham.
Hello. Thank you very much for having me on again.
This book absolutely, it intrigued me to the point where I started calling people up and saying, when's your birthday? I want to know what animal you are, and then read them the whole part of what animal it was. And then I realized that it would be a better selling tool to tell them what animal they were and that they had to buy the book to find out what it meant. The material and the investigation that you've done on these different signs are phenomenal. And you link them back to Göbekli Tepe. And I'm wondering, how did you make that connection? Was it that the animals on the pedestals there were the same animals that appear in the Zodiac? How did you make that connection?
Well, it all started 30 years ago. I think it was in the mid-90s, 1990s. I was writing a book about Alexander the Great. And he came from Mesopotamia. He came from Macedonia, but he was a Greek for all intents and purposes. And he spread the Greek world through conquest all over what was once the Persian Empire. And I was reading about when he went to Babylon, which was the greatest city in the world at the time, after he'd conquered the Persian Empire. Babylon is not far from where Baghdad is now in what's now Iraq. And he went there, and he was actually in the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, one of the 7 wonders of the world. And while he was there, he decided to go to the Babylonian priests and their astrologers and ask how his new campaigns were going to be going. In fact, it didn't turn out too well for him because he was dead within a few days. Somebody seemed to have poisoned him. But anyway, what his scribe wrote about him was that he was absolutely intrigued by the fact that the Babylonians had an 18-sign zodiac. And the zodiacs we have today, the 12-sign one, was the Greek zodiac, the one that Alexander knew about. And he was fascinated by this 18-sign zodiac, and he wanted them to do him a forecast based on this. Now, unfortunately, his scribe didn't tell us anything about what these 18 signs were, how they differed from the ones that the Greeks knew. And I just became absolutely fascinated by it, to try and find out a little bit more about this 18-sign zodiac. Now, in the British Museum, there's a Babylonian tablet dating from before Alexander's time, about 3,000 years old, that refers to this 18 sign.
Oh.
But it doesn't tell us what the signs are. And it gives us an idea about when in the year they fall, the dates. But it wasn't until Göbekli Tepe was discovered over the last 20 years, it's been excavated. And it wasn't until recently that they were able to find on these stones all these carved animals. And the research I was doing, I suddenly realized that they totally tied up with the Babylonian zodiac that had been found on these inscriptions, and that Alexander had known about all those years later. So that's how it all came together.
Well, to me, it was like, okay, 18 signs. Where did the 18, now, obviously, where did the 18 signs come from? I mean,
why 18?
Yeah.
Well, kind of right. It's why 12 we have to ask to start off with. Why did the Greek zodiac we use today? I mean, all these names like Aries and Gemini, they're all Greek names. It's the way the Greeks worked out the zodiac with 12 signs. Now, what the zodiac actually is a band of sky where, as seen from Earth, all the planets and the moon move around. In other words, there's a band of sky, all the planets and the Earth go around the sun in a roughly flat plane. It's called the ecliptic. Yes. And the stars that are the backdrop, if you like, to where these planets move around the sun, that's the zodiac band. Now, there are actually about 88 constellations in the sky all around, but this band only consists of 12 of them. And the zodiac sign in which you're said to be born, your sun sign or your star sign, is the whereabouts in the zodiac the sun appears to be as observed from Earth at the time you're born. And the way the Greeks did it, they started their year on or around the 21st of March, the spring equinox. And the reason they divided the year then into 12 signs, into 12 roughly equal parts, was because there are 12 lunar months in the year. There are 12 full moons to new moons and back to full moons again, months. And that's why they did 12, although they didn't correspond with each full to new moon. But that's why there were 12 of them. And the earlier zodiac, which we now know had 18 signs, must have been based on a completely different system. And why they did it like that, there's been no writing found that reveals that as yet.
Well, so what you've done is phenomenal. Why animals? Were they just animals that were around? Because I noticed a couple of the animals seemed to be animals I didn't recognize.
Some of them are extinct.
Well, yeah.
Unfortunately. Yeah, the way that the Greeks did it, we know that the Greeks tell us how they worked out the zodiac. If you actually look at the stars, say, that make up Aries, they don't look very much like a ram. It's just a couple of lines if you join the stars together.
Yeah.
And Gemini doesn't very much look like two people, and so on. What happened was that they'd already divided the year up into this 12 roughly equal parts. And so they thought, right, the sun, where it happens to be in the sky during that period of time, those are the stars behind it. The way that the stars, say Aries, got its name was the Greeks, over many years of observation, realized that people born at certain times of the year had similar traits or characteristics. Those born in the month that the sun was in what we now call Aries, people had ram-like characteristics. They rushed into things. They weren't afraid. Aries was also the god of war. And so people made good generals who were born at that time, and so on for all of the signs. And what they did, because behind where the sun would have been at that time of the year, they knew that the stars were, say, what we now call Aries. They were just, they weren't really any shape. They were just dots, if you like. And they decided to join them up into a rough shape of Aries, because they'd originally called the people who were born at that time Aries people, because they were like rams and they were like the god Aries. And people born at the sign of Gemini, they kind of had more than one side to their personality, like the Gemini twins. And so they called the stars that the sun was in at that time Gemini. So in other words, it wasn't the people that were named after the stars being in that shape. The stars were named after the characteristics people had at that time of the year.
Okay, so now we go back to the Mesopotamian chart, zodiac, and frankly, I'd rather be a fox than a fish. So thanks. I'll take being a fox any day. So it's kind of, to me, fascinating how the animals got to be, obviously it was the same type of characteristic was attributed to that animal. And that's how that grouping got named, I would think.
Yeah. I mean, it's obviously they were seeing animals that were around them that they were familiar with, and they considered that certain animals had certain characteristics. And so, for example, in the Babylonian zodiac, in the original zodiac, the one that goes all the way back to Göbekli Tepe that we know of from the carvings on the stones there, we have, say, the first sign, which is the spider. Now, that begins on March the 21st and goes until April the 9th. Now, the stars of the spider, the reason why they chose that creature, it would seem, is because people born at that time of the year were considered to have spider-like characteristics. Now, many ancient cultures regarded the spider as a symbol of creativity because it creates a web. It's also very patient. It waits for hours for something to land in its web before it pounces. So the kind of people that were born at that time of the year were thought to be very patient. They could wait, and then they could create they could create something, but at the right time. They would wait till the right time. They wouldn't rush in. And so they were patient people. And so they were likened to the spider, and that particular time of the year was named the spider. And the same as all the rest of the signs, right the way until the last one, which you say you are, which is the fox, which was the 2nd of March till the 20th of March. And the fox, those people who were born in that sign were considered to be cunning. They were very clever. They were the sort of people who could be quite charming. They were the sort of people who had alluring personalities. The fox was always considered to be cunning by many ancient cultures. It was always considered to be intelligent, and it was considered to be quite a sensual creature compared to others in the dog family. It's a very very different to other members of the dog family. It can work in packs, and it can also work completely independently, which is different to many of the other dog family. And so consequently, there were people who could work alone, but they could work with others. They're very versatile. So that's why each of the signs ended up being named after animals.
Well, it makes a great deal of sense. And the other thing that you brought out in the book, which I found fascinating, is that it's also important to recognize the time of year you're born, as opposed to, in addition to the sign, the climate, the environment you're born into has a great deal to do with developing your character and your future, actually.
Well, yeah, for many years, skeptics have said, well, there's no basis in astrology. You can't say that somebody's born at that time of the year. They're going to be influenced by the stars. They're light years away, literally. They couldn't influence us. Well, remember, as I was explaining, it's not the stars that were considered to influence people. It was the time of year that they were being born, and the stars were just being called after the name of an animal that seemed to represent the people who were born at that time of the year. Now, they would say, well, being born at a different time of the year isn't going to make people different to that, or you're not going to have any shared characteristics with somebody else who shares your time of year of being born. But only in the last couple of years, research has been carried out at Tel Aviv University, and it's also being continued to be carried out at Cambridge in England. Top universities doing molecular and biological research have shown that people born at different times of the year do tend to share characteristics. The reason being is that they share the period of time that their mother was pregnant with them. And so that 9-month period is going to be the same for somebody born on the same day. And so people born in a particular period are going to share the same period of being when their mother was pregnant. And during those times, because of different seasonal effects on the human body, the hormones change differently for that 9-month period to that 9-month period, and so on. And it's those hormones that this latest research has shown that you experienced in your bloodstream when you were in your mother's womb that actually help shape things that cause different personality characteristics later in life. And so therefore, somebody born at the same time of the year can very well share similar characteristics. And there's a scientific reasoning behind it.
Well, there are also DNA things. For instance, there are groups in Alaska that are able to stand the cold far better than you or I are because of the environment that they have been gestated in, and that the family history. Excuse me. And I would think the same thing would be true of desert people who are able to, take the heat better than you or I are.
Well, indeed. But with everybody, it's going to be different seasons throughout the year. Then different things happen. Our ancestors in the winter would have to hunt and have a different kind of metabolism to during the summer when they were living actually off the land. So, yeah, very true.
No, I think what your book has done is made me a lot more aware of characteristics that you pointed out about me that I was blown away by. First of all, the wealth of knowledge and information you give each of these different signs, and how you're able to get into very, very details to the fact of certainly the personality characteristics, but how you are in a relationship, how you are as a parent, how you are as a child, the different also the part that I liked was the cautionary tale, the cautionary,
Oh, right.
watch out for this characteristic because it's there too. But but it was pages and pages and pages of things that I could actually relate to far better than the generalities that the astrological signs give you in all of the astrology books that you read. Now, to be fair, a good astrologer can pay you down to a mole on your left shoulder, a good one. But actually, most of the books out there are giving you generalities. You give specifics here, which I found were fascinating. How did you first gather the people together of your 18 different signs, and then how did you gather your information? Because the information in the book is phenomenal. It's really incredible.
Well, it happened over quite a long period of time. It starts off, as I said, in the mid-90s when I first came across this 18 sign zodiac, or the existence of it, when doing the research into Alexander the Great. I was able gradually, piece by piece, every so often I'd come back to looking at it all, and gradually managed to find out what the different dates related to by different discoveries that were found in different places over the years since. And obviously you'll appreciate that archaeology taking place in the last few decades in places like Iraq and Iran, and places like this, it is almost non-existent because of the various troubles that have been there. So there's only occasional finds that have been made, and we were able to put this zodiac together. But it was not until 2012 when some of the last bits and pieces were being put together of the Göbekli Tepe discoveries that I was able to suddenly realize, those are what all the creatures are of the zodiac. I mean, incidentally, the word zodiac comes from Greek, which means of animals. The zoo is in the same as in zoo, where you keep animals, or zoology, the study of animals. So the Greeks originally had all animals for it, and some of them, most of them, are still there, like fishes and the ram and so on. Now, what Göbekli Tepe is, for those who don't know, it's sort of like Stonehenge, but if you imagine Stonehenge without the lintel stones on the top, without the arches, but something like that, but a lot of them all buried in a large area. And they were buried seemingly deliberately when the people who used them moved on, or climate change happened, or something took place, and they wanted to bury these to preserve them, which means that they are still able to be seen today. And unlike Stonehenge, they were carving all these animals onto these stones. And they included things like the fox and the spider and the scorpion and other things that related to the later Babylonian zodiac. So obviously that's how it came together. So, okay, so it was taken from originally discovering about this in the mid-90s to the early second decade of this century to start putting it together. But then was the case of, well, how did these people who used this zodiac, how did they consider what people were like? I mean, we know how the Greeks did it. Over many years, they developed what they thought was a charts, if you like, of people's personality traits they shared in common. But what were the shared traits of people born in these signs? I mean, obviously, like the spider, you could come up with a few ideas of what they would have thought, just like I was talking about, as well as I was mentioning the fox, just a few ideas of what they were like. But for the detail to work out how, well, that I thought, well, if we knew when the 18 signs related to the times of the year. So consequently, if people really did have characteristics in common, which modern research suggests they may have, then it would just be a case of asking lots of people born in each sign to fill out forms and come up with things that they did and find out if they all share characteristics. Like, are they sporting people? Are they artistic? Do they like dancing? Well, I mean, I started to do this and it was taking forever. I mean, you know, I'd have to do hundreds of people to get it right. I mean, the Greeks had worked their thing out over many generations until a couple of years ago when I came across AI. And I realized that by going into things like Chat GPT, I thought, hold on a minute. I just tried it and I said, can you give me 200 people, famous people, born between that date and that date? Straight away, it was up. Oh, okay. How many of these people are sporting people? Okay. How many are emotionally
Wow.
and it went on like that. And ultimately, I could just do it not just with people who are particularly famous, but anybody who's out there on the internet. And I was able to work out, it could never have been done before. Because of AI, I was able to come up with people who've had sporting traits in common, people who had what kind of jobs people had who were of that sign, and that's how it came about.
Well, you go into such detail. I was blown away by the detail that you went into. Out of curiosity, who was the most, without getting political, who was the most interesting person that you looked at that you applied this to and found it to be accurate?
Oh, there was a lot. I mean, for example, let's have a look what I've got on the list of people here. These are people, you are the fox, right? These are people who share your characteristics. These are the people who are born in the same fox period, which is 2nd of March to 20th of March. Daniel Craig, the actor, Michael Gorbachev, the man who basically turned what was once a terrible regime in Russia for a time into a very decent place.
Yes.
Alexander Graham Bell, the man who invented the telephone, and a whole load of other things as well. Joseph Priestley, another major scientist. People who are born in that sign all seem to be the kind of people who they have many different abilities at the same time, multifarious. Each one of those people were very good at other things. Like Daniel Craig, we all know him for being James Bond, but he's an astronomer.
Really?
As well. Apparently, he's a great dancer. These people are very versatile. Quincy Jones, one of those, you know him for making music.
Yeah.
He was also an excellent sports person. So this is what the fox tends to be. They tend to be able to do many different sorts of things. I was talking about the spider. Here's a few famous spiders. They tend to be people who are quite, creative, and there's quite a lot of actors born, born in that sign. You've got Gary Oldman, and you've got Eddie Murphy, Russell Crowe, but you've got a lot of quite important singers born there too, like Elton John, and also you've got Diana Ross. So there's so many different people that seem to fit into these characteristics. But there was one of these, I can't remember which it was now, and that nearly every oh, here we go. It's called the aurochs. Now, an aurochs, or an aurochs, it's like a buffalo. I don't think many of them exist anymore, certainly not in Europe, but there used to be a lot. Now, these people who are supposed to be strong, they're supposed to have great leadership abilities, they're supposed to be able to rise to the top of something, particularly in politics and military. Now, look at these famous aurochs. Thomas Jefferson, President of the United States. Queen Elizabeth II, the longest reigning queen. And I mean, basically, a lot of the kings and queens in this country made a complete pig's breakfast out of it. But she was brilliant.
Yes.
Oliver Cromwell, he was the only person in some country to overthrow a king. The Duke of Wellington, the person who led the Battle of Waterloo and defeated Napoleon. And so it goes on. So I don't know. There's so many of these people that seem to fit right that it would be difficult to say there's just one that was outstanding.
What about something like Jesus? he wasn't really born on the 25th of December. It's very clear he was born later in the year or earlier in the year. Were you able to sort of look at him and his birthday and see what animal he was?
Well, because we don't know when he was born. The Bible doesn't actually say when he was born.
That's true.
The Christmas bit only came about because when the Roman Catholic Church was established, and the Romans basically had, at the middle of winter, around the 25th of December, they had a special midwinter celebratory thing that worshipped the god Sol Invictus, the sun god. So they thought, well, as people are having that time at the year to celebrate anyway, we'll have it as a celebration for the birth of Christ. But nobody knows when he was born. But if there's a possibility that he was born around the
March
25th, he's a fish. Interestingly, he's represented by a fish in the early Christian iconography. Always represents him as a fish. He's also born in the same sign as Joan of Arc, so she was definitely a big name Christian. One of the most defining traits of the fish, this is what it reads here, is their profound empathy. They have an innate ability to sense and understand the emotions of those around them, often absorbing and reflecting those feelings as if they were their own. Well, that does sound like it. Perhaps he was born on December the 25th.
Wow. Okay, let's pick somebody that we know for sure their birthday, historically speaking. I've got everything going through my head here now, but let's look at somebody like, I don't know, George Washington. I don't know when his birthday was, but
I don't know when his George Washington. Let's see if I can find out his birthday. George Washington birthday. There we go. 22nd of February. So let's see. We can look at him. Where's 22nd of February come in? In his case, 22nd of February, he's the eagle. That's interesting because the eagle is the symbol of the United States. The bull-headed eagle. Okay, let's have a look. George Washington. In ancient Mesopotamian mythology, the celestial eagle was revered as a symbol of strength, courage, and daring spirit. Those born under this sign are known for practical and intuitive behavior. They possess the remarkable ability to change the situation and to have others follow their ideas. They are adepts at finding solutions that others have failed to find. I mean, it does sound. It's also, do you know somebody else who's born in the eagle sign? The other most famous president of the United States, Abraham Lincoln.
Oh, wow.
12th of February. So there you go.
Okay. So you have all of these characteristics that are dead on. How does one use this to predict? I mean,
that's a slightly different. Right. In astrology, you've got what they call natal astrology, to do with when you were born.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, when astrologers do your birth chart, they know where all the planets were, in what constellation, what zodiac sign when you were born, and they make sort of predictions based on that. And when you see the things in the newspapers and tell you like, okay, you're Leo and it's going to be a hard week for you because of this, that's based on where certain planets are in the solar system at that time. Okay, now I don't know so much about that. I haven't been able to look into that, but what I would say is the kind of astrology that I'm just talking about is just what they call sun sign or birth sign astrology. It's based on when in the year you're born. Nothing to do with what planets are going around out there or where they happen to be at the time. Now, when I first started this in the mid-90s, if somebody said to me, do you believe in astrology? Your birth sign, when you're born at a certain time, And I know so many people swore by it. I said, nah, absolute rubbish. There's no way that the stars way out there could affect your life here. But now, over these years, as I've been explaining, it's all become apparent how this could work. And I'm convinced now, obviously, that when you're born in the year does have an effect on what you're going to be like, against all chance and just plain luck, if you like. So in this way that I would now say, yes, I believe that, whereas 30 years ago I said I don't believe a word of it, I'm not going to turn around and say that the idea of planets being in certain places in your chart, if you like, when you were born, or when the planets are in certain positions on a certain day, it may have nothing to do with life down here. I won't say it, because there might be other forces at work that I haven't looked into that may mean that's just as true.
What animal would July 4th be?
July 4th is the July 4th. Where's that one? July, April, May, June, July 4th. That's the serpent.
That's the United
Serpents
States.
possess a strong sense of intuition, often able to accurately assess situations and people. They tend to be wise beyond their years. Interestingly, serpents are considered a symbol of wisdom throughout the world. They're also a symbol of medicine very often. And a lot of people born in this are
that's the birth of the United States, though.
The what, sorry?
That's the birth of the United States.
The birth of the United. Oh, I see what you're saying. Oh, interesting. People who actually are born at that time of the year, it is a sign very often of spiritual people. The Dalai Lama, he was born then.
Oh, wow.
And you've got Nelson Mandela. He was the one who changed everything in South Africa.
Yeah.
And you've got, who else have we got? Emmeline Pankhurst, the woman who got votes for women in England, in Britain. So yeah, people who bring about a lot of change and revolutionary ideas are born in that sign. So it's interesting that the 4th of July is the birth of the United States.
I think that what you've done is give us a tremendous amount of wonderful material to analyze our own life and our own pathway by all of the different characteristics that come from that animal, and you give the negative side effects too. You know, it's I know I was working with my tech, and I gave him, he was a gazelle, and one of the features was eager to get into projects but having trouble completely finishing them. and
that was right.
And I looked at it and I said, when I read that, I stopped, and he said, I know, I have a lot of stuff I have to get done yet. And it was so true.
Some of these signs, I mean, they're all animals, and some of them were obviously taken up by the Greeks as well. I mean, going through them all, you've got the spider, the oryx, which we've mentioned, the mouflon, which most people have never heard of. They're extinct, but it's an early form of wild sheep. It didn't look like an ordinary little sheep. It was pretty big and had huge horns. The vulture, the gazelle, which you've mentioned, the serpent, the crayfish, the lion. Now, the interesting thing about the original 18 sign zodiac lion, it's in the same kind of area as Leo later on in the Greek zodiac. It's between August and the 11th and August 30th. So it's in approximately the same period. The only difference is it's a lioness. It's not the lion with the mane. You've got a swan that follows that. I'm that one. 31st of August to September the 20th. The crane, another bird. The scorpion, again, we've got Scorpio coming from, maybe again, they took the ideas the same at that time. You've got a horse that comes next, a goat, a wolf, the fish were mentioned, swallow, the eagle, and the fox. So, so some are similar to the
Yeah.
legend zodiac.
What is King Charles' birthday?
When is his birthday?
You don't know?
No. It took me long enough to know when the Queen's was. People in this country aren't really into birthdays as much as they are in the States, I don't think. 14th of November. Now, 14th of November, what is he then? November there. He's a horse. Okay. In Mesopotamian tradition, the wild horse symbolized adventure. Those born in this sign are adventurous, although they retain a practical attitude to life. They are often associated with matters of conservation, wildlife, and so he's really into that. That's interesting. I never realized that. They possess alert and appealing personalities, but they can be pushed around by others before they begin to stand up for themselves. People think that Queen Camilla pushes them around. Other famous horses, Madame Curie, the lady who invented X-rays and things. Jodie Foster, the actress. Carl Sagan, the astronomer. Whoopi Goldberg. Indira Gandhi, the Prime Minister of India. And Scarlett Johansson.
Well, knowing, knowing these kind of characteristics attributed to each of these animals, in many ways is a tool for predictability as to how they will respond or act or work in either a group or individually. And so in a way, what I will be using this for actually is checking people out as to their characteristics, and then whether or not they will fit into the slots that I have open that I'm looking for. So it isn't something to be taken as the Holy Grail, so to speak, but it gives you characteristics that could crop up that you might have to deal with. And, if you're okay with those characteristics, fine. And if you're not, then you have a forewarning that this is potential here. So pay attention. It isn't absolute, but it does give you tools to utilize, especially with partnerships, with working with people, with family members. I know my sister's a spider. That makes sense. It definitely made sense when I read the spider characteristics that it's her. And if I had realized that these are characteristics that are possibly there, it enables you to kind of couch yourself in different ways when trying to get a point across. Instead of, something bullheaded wouldn't work because she'd let you hang yourself in a heartbeat. And,
so it tells you how to sort of, how to best deal with certain people.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So it's a kind of predictive thing in that respect.
Yeah, I am an advocate of free will. So that no matter what an astrology chart is going to say about you, you have the power to go a different direction if you want to. So it's not the absolute that some people put into it. I'm not saying it isn't a good science, because it is a good science. But when it comes into the predictability part of it, that depends upon the level of spirituality of the person doing the predicting. So you have to look at them and see what's going on with them. And
good point. I mean, one of the things I found fascinating about this is because it's so right, astonishingly, how did people, Göbekli Tepe, if you take it all back to there, that's 10,000 years ago, perhaps even as far as 12, some people think. And the weird thing about Göbekli Tepe is that it's this amazing sort of series of stone circles and built with greater precision than Stonehenge, and carved with these animals in a way that wasn't done again that we know of for many thousands of years after that. So we do these Göbekli Tepe and another one nearby called Karahan Tepe, where you've got suddenly this civilization, if you like, comes from nowhere, builds this stuff, disappears again. Well, the question is, where did it come from? It must have had a trial and error to build up to this. And because they didn't have computers back then, at least that we know about,
Yes.
in order to figure out what each of these characteristics were like of these people, it takes a lot of trial and error. We know that the Greeks took a long time to work it all out. So it shows that there must have been a civilization building up to this, but there's no sign of it anymore that they found anyway in eastern Turkey. Now, what's just north of eastern Turkey? It's the Black Sea. Now, the Black Sea, it's an interesting thing. The Göbekli Tepe civilization starts at about the point that the last ice age ended. Now, during the ice age, great tracts of ice covered the northern hemisphere, down covering most of England, covering the North America, right down to the Great Lakes, a bit further down, with 2 miles of ice, like you get in the middle of Greenland now or on Antarctica. I mean, 2 miles of ice pushing down,
a lot of ice.
and over a couple of hundred years even, it melted. And the difference of the sea levels between now and then is like 400 feet. Now, most of that melted pretty quickly. Now, going back to the Black Sea, up until just shortly after the Ice Age, the Mediterranean was separated from what's now the Black Sea by a kind of mountain range, a kind of big natural dam. And the Black Sea was a big valley, if you like, low-lying area. And then when the water started to rise, it started pouring over this dam, which is now the Bosphorus. And it literally was like a waterfall the size of, 100 times the size of the Niagara Falls, pouring water over year after year into what's now the Black Sea. And that is probably where there would have been a civilization that came up with all this. And its last survivors were the people who probably built Göbekli Tepe. And it may be the flooding of that after the end of the Ice Age, just before Göbekli Tepe was built, that gave rise to the flood stories of Noah and the Bible. So that's what I think it all started. Be interesting if they can start to do some underwater archaeology there. Now they're getting much more sensitive equipment that can look along the bottom of seabeds and see if there's something under the mud and see if there really was a civilization that's buried there.
Well, it makes sense. And what if it wasn't buried? What if it was just the sand of the water coming over it and that burying it, as opposed to physically burying it?
Oh, as opposed to them burying it. Oh, that's worth looking into. I don't really know, actually. That's an interesting point. Yeah, there could have been a flood there that did it. That is interesting.
Because, I've lived by the water all my life. And, when the tides come and go, they're depositing more sand every time. And it's like, is the Sphinx? Was the Sphinx covered in one, by being buried, or was it the water coming in and going out and coming in and going out, and therefore that's what covered it with sand?
Yeah, no, that's an interesting point. I'll have a look into that.
Oh,
very interesting. I have no idea, but everybody thinks they probably buried it deliberately. But interesting.
I mean, I can see them running from a flood, but I have trouble visualizing them covering it with dirt. That to me doesn't make sense, because it was a place of worship of some sort, and there are so many of those circles at Göbekli Tepe. It's not just the one. There are quite a few. It's a very large tract of land that has these edifices on them, and it's, you sort of wonder, what was the point? Were they worshiping the animals? Were they, was it a reminder of they came from the stars? Is there a reason why all of those signs are there? And I find it also fascinating that it's a circle as opposed to a square, so that there's gives you idea of a cycle, of a spiral of some sort, of time going through circles and spirals and spiraling somewhere. So, but it's always felt to me as though nobody actually, to me, it doesn't feel as though anybody buried it. It was time buried it. So there may be thousands of years of water or something washing in and out and in and out. I think, prior to the last ice age, we're pretty good as far as, time frame and things like that, even with carbon dating. But the reality is that this planet's been around for millions of years. And
Yeah, true enough. It has.
Lots of nature has covered and uncovered a lot of things, and I think is still going to be uncovering, especially in Antarctica as that melts down there. They're already finding habitation, and at one time, Antarctica was at the equator, so it had flora and fauna, and it had all sorts of wonderful, lush stuff there. So who knows what's actually there once you get all the way down.
Well, certainly when the dinosaurs are alive and they were there weren't dinosaurs living in freezing conditions at the South Pole, as you say. No. They were up at the equator, and of course the continents move around because of plate tectonics, or continental drift, that they used to call it. So I mean,
it's kind of, for me, we talk about the tectonics, we talk about the plates moving, but nobody talks about the fact that they're still moving. And I think they're going to move back eventually till we have Pangea again.
Well, yes. I mean, it's in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, all the way down from Iceland, right the way down to further south and South Africa and Argentina, right down the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. You've got this thing where lava is bubbling out in a great big crooked line that goes all the way up. And as it does that, it pushes the continents apart by just a couple of centimeters a year, but it still happens. And so what happens is the United States and Europe is moving further apart, but on the other side of the United States,
getting closer,
it's pushing in from the Pacific, where the same kind of thing is happening, which is what pushes the Rockies up. That's why you've got the Rocky Mountains there, because it's being pushed between. Okay, it's only a couple of centimeters a year, but over millions of years, basically. I mean, the United States used to be attached to Europe. There's rocks up in Scotland which are exactly the same as something in Newfoundland, Canada, and there's rocks in France which are the same as in New York. So yeah, you're right. It will eventually.
Well, yeah. I mean, the stone chambers in New England are very similar to the passage tombs that are over in Europe, and I think that people are so fascinated with the future that they aren't educated by the past, and it's sad that we have to rediscover so much stuff that we knew before. And I'm an ex-school teacher, and I mourn the fact that we aren't teaching history anymore, and we aren't teaching archaeology either, and we should be, because there's so much history out there, and this is another one of those areas that people should learn about. People should know about it. It's a part of it. Gives you information as to how to better live your life, and to better understand some of the attributes that if you read this in private and you can be honest with yourself about some of the characteristics, it's like, yeah, maybe that is me. I'm just a little bit, but you have the opportunity to make corrections and changes, which is really terrific. and to better understand the people around you, which is really another, if you're dealing with lots of different people in your life, it's a good idea to be able to kind of figure out what some of their attributes are and make sure that you don't cross them in the wrong way by accident.
Yeah, and it teaches you how to make sure that you can actually maybe get one step ahead by doing the sort of thing that they'll like as well.
That too. I mean, it gives you another way. And the only way people are going to understand how accurate this is to get the book, to read their own characteristics, be honest with themselves, and then start checking out the people they know so that they can see how accurate it actually is. I was blown away with it. I spent hours calling people up and saying, I can't remember when your birthday is. What month were you born? And, and in a couple of cases, I said, thank you. And I hung up and I went to the book and I said, okay, so what are those characteristics? How accurate are they? Because I like to fact check. Patrick Cook was my late husband, and he had a photographic memory. And I stopped fact checking him after about the third month because I got tired of just saying, yeah, he's right. Yeah, he's right. All right. A photographic memory. All right. But this gives you material to work with to make relationships even better, which is even, a wonderful thing to know about. And you go into what a child of it would be like, so that you'll go into a fox child. How would a fox child behave, and give you a better way of reasoning with children in order to get through to them. So, because sometimes they don't they never listen, but at least you'll know why, But I think if I was still teaching, I would immediately have the birthdays of the children in my classroom out there so I could see what were the best way to approach them in teaching them or correcting them if they needed correction. So I think your book is phenomenal, and I am so delighted that you wrote it. And it may be my Christmas present to everybody I know, because
oh, good, wonderful, thank you.
No, seriously. I mean, have you had any sort of response to it? Because it to me, it's more valuable than standard tarot. And
No,
maybe
I haven't had it. No, I haven't. No, not really. I mean, I've done a few podcasts like this, and people have all said, they've been, they liked it, and they've said, yeah, it really seems accurate. But I haven't. I mean, I've had some. There was the other week. There was a British newspaper called the Daily Mail. It's like the biggest newspaper in this country, and it serialized my book. It had it all in there, and it was online as well as in their paper. And they had a thing underneath where people could comment whether they liked it or didn't, whether it seemed accurate or whether it didn't. And literally, it was split straight down the middle for people who said it was accurate and people who said it wasn't. And I thought, hold on a minute, that's weird. And then I looked at the comments that people were coming, and the comments of the people who said that it wasn't them says, rubbish, I never read this stuff. It's not accurate. How would they know if they hadn't read it?
Well, not only that, but when they had that where they could leave their opinion, I would want to know what their birthday was.
They should have put that there.
Yeah.
They should have given a bit where they could put that in.
So if somebody gave you that kind of a response, it would be interesting to know what animal they came from. And
testing. A skeptical animal. The most skeptical of the signs, as far as I know, is probably the lion. So people born in mid to late August.
Well, I would just want to know what their birthdays were. If they were rejecting something that could be helpful to them if they were the kind of person that didn't want to learn something new or was set in their ways and not about to, open up their consciousness to something else. So that would be my first thing, and the people that loved it are probably those that are more mellow and so that it would seem to me that a rejection would hold to their character, their animal, or their exception to their animal as to, this is new, this is different, this is something I got to get into. You've opened a Pandora's box here, I think, that's going to be quite phenomenal. And heck, I can see dating services where, what animal are you most attracted to or compatible to and stuff like that. It's a wonderful book. It's the intensity and the investigation that you've done and the advice you give and how you define the different animals and their attitudes, and especially the ones that are extinct, I would think have another quality in that they come through time, so that if the animal is no longer here on the planet, they must be a timeless spirit who's traveling through time too. I mean, you can get into all sorts of wonderful spiritual stuff here.
Yeah, there are 2 or 3 of them that are extinct. So yes.
So there could even be another addition into looking at, the animals, and you can take this so much further, and it would not surprise me if you did, because there's so much further you can go with it, and so many different wonderful ways you can use it that aren't invasive, but just give you a better understanding as to a personality and how to interact with them in a very positive manner. So you can tell I loved the book.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you.
I just noticed our time is up. I want to thank you so much, and maybe we can do this again, but with a different focus as to how to use the book as opposed to analyzing everybody. But
Yeah, no, that's an idea. Yeah, I'll give that some thought for, if we're going to come on again, I'll give that some thought before I do it. So I'll, to tell you how my experiences with using it like that.
Well, actually, when you stop to think about it, standard astrology has so much investigation, and it's been used for centuries and stuff like that. And people usually go, well, this is what usually happens when this is in effect and stuff like that. And that's what they're predicting from. But you don't have that here yet. So
no, not the predicting bit. No.
Well, I think that there should be how to use it.
I shall definitely let you know the moment I start working that out.
I mean, relationships, choosing jobs, choosing people to be with, what to avoid. Oh, you got, yes. I'm not going to write it for you, but I think there's a lot of more material that you can use this for that can be of benefit to people. And this is a great start. And I want to thank you so much. This book is available on Amazon. Where else is it available?
It's in all the Barnes and Noble shops, so it's all over the place, I think.
Well, there should be a run on it, because it really is, and it's a great read. It's you may not want to read straight through, because I didn't. When I discovered my animal, I read my animal, and then I started to read the animals of everybody I know, and then I realized it was that accurate, so I had to get you on the show. So thank you so much for coming. I so enjoyed this, and I think there's more material here we should at a later date look into.
Okay then. Well, thank you very much indeed.
And I'll get them to you. everybody for listening. Buy the book. You will be amazed.